What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Random Video Blog, where every single Friday I, Graham GSM Matthews, run down my rambling thoughts in the wrestling world, share a few stories, etc., etc. And anyone familiar with my channel over the last 3.5 years would know that dating back to February 2014, I've had a recurring series here on the channel, specifically the Random Video Blog, called You Never Know Who Might Be a Wrestling Fan, recalling my stories and tales of people I've encountered throughout life that I never thought would be a wrestling fan. It's pretty self-explanatory, from people at school to people at work to people I've run into on the street, former friends, a girl I used to know that became my girlfriend, all this other crazy ass shit. So check out all the previous installments. I usually put the prior installment in the description box down below. But if you go to the Random Video Blog playlist, you can search through it. Again, there's 9 previous installments. This is episode 10 here today. So check out all previous 9 episodes from the last 3.5 years. So today's story, my first episode in about 4, 5, 6 months. I think the last installment came in May. But this is only relatively recent. So as I've talked about before, I started taking graduate classes a few months ago. I got my undergrad, graduated college back in May, only decided a few months later that I was going to be going for my master's this fall. So I started my classes at the very late month, and very late in the month of August, just a few months ago. And, I'm not really sure what to expect. It's a different college. I went to school in Massachusetts. I live in Connecticut, so I commute to the school that I'm taking classes at, which is pretty cool. And I wasn't really sure what to expect from the classes, what the assignments would be like, what the people would be like. And you guys know me. I don't really give a shit what anyone else thinks about me, which is why I wear wrestling t-shirts, usually in the first day of class of college and shit. I'll wear a normal t-shirt or a nice t-shirt. From there on out, 95% of the time you will see me wearing wrestling gear. To all of my classes, pretty much anywhere I can wear it, I'll wear wrestling shirts. So on this first day, I didn't wear a wrestling shirt. But I did make it known that I was a wrestling fan. So on my very, very first class, again, late August, it was on a Monday night during Raw. I'm missing Raw for this, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. Pretty cool, calm, collected, laid-back class. We're all introducing ourselves, what we do. I say I write for Bleacher Report, and the teacher likes that. He's impressed, blah, blah, blah. I don't say I'm a wrestling fan, okay? So we're talking about misleading headlines. And you see that shit all the time nowadays. Like, it says one thing, the article is a different thing. Essentially, it's clickbait. So we were talking all about that. Then out of nowhere, this guy that you would never know would be a wrestling fan, this big, jacked up kid who was definitely on the football team. Again, the last person. You look at me, you could probably expect I'm a wrestling fan. I look like, not to stereotype any wrestling fans, I'm not some muscled up, super jacked up, suave guy. So it's pretty obvious that I'm a wrestling fan. If you ever saw this t-shirt, you'd be like, oh, he's probably a wrestling fan. That makes sense. This kid, you probably would not imagine in today's day and age would be a wrestling fan, but apparently he is. So he raises his hand and offers an example of a misleading headline of wrestling. He fucking mentions wrestling dirt sheets. He didn't mention a single site, like he didn't specify one site. But he said, yeah, so I read about, news about wrestling, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but it'll say, spoiler on upcoming match plans for so-and-so. And then I read the article, and then it doesn't say anything about it. There's no source. There's really nothing there. It's only purely speculation, nothing fact. It's all clickbait. It's all misleading. So I raised my hand 2 seconds later. I wasted no time in raising my hand. And like I've said before, I have no shame in admitting I'm a wrestling fan to the public. I don't give a shit. I don't fucking care. So I raised my hand, and I'm like, dude, I used to write for websites like that. A website called Sportskeeda. Fucking garbage. Awful website. Do not go to them for your news. Bleacher Report and What Culture, plug in my own websites, the ones that I currently write for. That's where it's at. And the kid kind of laughed, and we were talking a bit afterwards. He saw my WrestleMania background on my laptop, so we were talking a bit about that for a few minutes. I haven't talked to him since, but I do know he was a wrestling fan. So that's one little story. And 2 other instances. So I have classes throughout the week. That's not the only one, but a lot of the classes have the same kids because it's all the same major, whether it be communications or digital media, journalism, whatever. I'm journalism, but a lot of the kids in the same classes as me, they all have the same classes themselves and other classes that I don't have. But at any rate, so we get to another class, and a kid next to me, now a different kid, brings up, he noted, he's like, oh, you said you watch WWE or you write about WWE, is that correct? And I said, yeah. I'm not really sure what he's going to say. And again, not your typical looking wrestling fan. But he's like, oh yeah, I saw some guy named, I think his name was James Ellsworth, kind of like playing off that he didn't watch it, which I figured would be logical. Like, he knows nothing about it, but he saw some guy. Like, how would you recognize James Ellsworth unless you fucking watch the product, you know? So then I kind of got the feeling that he did watch, but he didn't want to admit it. So from there on out, unlike the other kid, I would talk wrestling, and I still talk wrestling with him every single week when I'm in class. In between breaks, before class, after class. He complimented me on my glorious Bobby Roode t-shirt the other day when I wore it to class, which was really cool. So he watches the product, maybe not on time, because again, my classes are during Raw and SmackDown throughout the week, so it's pretty funny. But we'll talk about, you know, I think I tweeted a few weeks ago how I was talking with that kid about how, you know, predictable or how dull the current WWE product is. Of course, before AJ Styles became WWE champion, but like right after TLC, the product was like, oh, like who cares about the Raw and SmackDown rivalry? But at any rate, we'll talk about that, and he'll keep his voice down low. He's one of those type of people that he doesn't really want to know. He doesn't want other people to know that he watches wrestling, but he won't not talk about it, you know? So he's kind of in that middle ground. I just don't give a fuck. I don't care. So we were talking about wrestling. That happened. So that was really cool. He's a cool guy, and I like talking to him before and during and after classes and whatnot. And then someone else complimented me. I have on the back of my laptop, which you probably have never seen before because I always use it to record these videos. For now, you know, pretty funny now that I mentioned that. I have a Kevin Owens sticker on my laptop. I have Seth Rollins stickers, logos on the front and back. Kevin Owens too. And some other giant-ass, jacked-up kid saw that. And when I say giant-ass, I'm not talking about fat. Like, this kid's just really, really big and muscled up and shit. He's like, oh, I looked at like the Kevin Owens thing, represent. So, again, he obviously watches the product, too. It wasn't like it was fucking CM Punk or someone like a John Cena or Triple H or an Undertaker or a Stone Cold Steve Austin that anyone would recognize. He saw Kevin Owens, who was a fresh face in the WWE. So he obviously watches or had seen some of the product in recent years. So that's 3 people in my fucking master's classes, my graduate classes, that watch or sometimes watch WWE, which is unheard of. And I said this to someone after I had found all of this out in the first like 2 weeks of me taking graduate classes. Like, I found more wrestling fans in my first 2 weeks of graduate courses than I did in my 4 years of undergrad. So maybe it's a different, you know, I'm taking graduate classes in Connecticut. I took my undergrad in Mass. Maybe it's a difference of area thing, but it's not like it's the other side of the country. It's still the Northeast, and wrestling is still pretty big over here. In my 4 years at Endicott College, where I took my undergrad, where I went to college, let me see, how many wrestling fans did I meet? I met one kid that was 1 grade below me, RJ, obviously, and not counting his friends, but RJ, the kid that was a grade below me, Tommy Sharp, maybe 1 or 2 other people. And that was it. Maybe 5 people, probably closer to 3 or 4. And I just met just as many in the matter of 2 weeks of taking graduate courses where you would think, oh, wrestling is beneath me. I'm getting my master's. I don't watch wrestling, but not the case. So again, it goes back to the title of this video. You never know who might be a wrestling fan.